President Lee Jae-myung orders heightened economic vigilance as Middle East tensions threaten global energy supplies and keep oil prices elevated. Seoul moves to fast-track relief spending and energy-saving measures while ramping up efforts to secure alternative oil supplies abroad. Expectations are rising for talks between Washington and Tehran to resume, even as the United States begins enforcing a naval blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz following failed negotiations. And South Korea's ICT exports hit a record high in March, surpassing $40 billion for the first time, driven by surging AI and semiconductor demand that pushed chip exports above $30 billion. We start here in the capital Seoul, where President Lee Jae-myung presided over another meeting of his cabinet and emergency economic authorities, calling for continued attention to unfolding events in the Middle East as tensions remain high. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin has our top story.
Following the breakdown of peace talks between the United States and Iran over the weekend, President Lee Jae-myung has urged his cabinet to remain on high alert.
당분간은 글로벌 에너지, 원자재 공급망의 어려움 그리고 고유가가 계속될 것입니다. 이를 상수로 두고 현재의 비상 대응 체제를 더욱 확고하게 다져나가야겠습니다.
Lee made the remarks while chairing a cabinet/emergency economic meeting at the Blue House on Tuesday, hours after the U.S. military began blockading traffic entering or exiting Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The president first called for the swift implementation of the government's roughly $17 billion supplementary budget, which passed the National Assembly last week. A key part of the plan is the distribution of cash handouts to the bottom 70% of income earners, set to begin on April 27th.
지난해의 민생회복 소비 쿠폰 지급 당시에 일부 지자체에서 일부 지방정부에서 발생했던 비인권적인 행태가 혹여라도 반복되지 않게 각별하게 유념해 주면 좋겠습니다.
He was referring to some local governments using different colors for the voucher-style cash relief depending on income levels, which at the time raised concerns about stigmatization. Lee also called on the public to help reduce energy use, noting an increase in oil consumption following the government's price cap measures.
결국은 생산 원가와 실제 판매 가격의 차액 부분을 다 정부가 보전을 해줘야 되는데 그게 다 결국은 국민 세금 아니겠습니까?
South Korea froze the third round of fuel price caps for refiners at 1,934 won, or around $1.30 per liter for gasoline last week. Beyond managing domestic demand, efforts to diversify energy supply routes were also discussed. Having dispatched officials to Algeria and Libya, the foreign ministry shared plans to send a special envoy to the Republic of Congo. This comes after President Lee sent his chief of staff to Kazakhstan, Oman, and Saudi Arabia last week to secure additional supplies of crude oil and naphtha. With the conflict dragging on, South Korea is stepping up efforts to minimize disruptions as it relies heavily on energy imports from the Middle East. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea has started talks with Iran to secure the safe passage of 26 Korean-flagged ships currently in the Strait of Hormuz. Seoul's foreign ministry has reportedly dispatched a special delegation to Tehran and shared details about the vessels with senior Iranian officials. The 26 vessels and their 173 crew members remain stranded in the strait amid the U.S. Iran conflict, as the latest talks follow a 2-week ceasefire that led to peace negotiations in Pakistan and include discussions on humanitarian aid in response to growing international calls. Now, with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz now stretching beyond a month, oil producers in the Middle East are reportedly reaching out to Seoul about using South Korea's oil storage facilities. Kim So-young has the story.
As the Strait of Hormuz has remained closed for more than a month, oil-producing countries in the Middle East are looking to South Korea as a potential oil storage hub. Speaking at a briefing in Sejong on Tuesday, Yang Yu, Director General of the Office of Industry, Trade and Resource Security at the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources, said Middle Eastern countries want to use Korea's petroleum storage sites. Director General Yang said exporters are trying to reduce their dependence on the Strait of Hormuz, explaining that countries such as Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait could face even more economic damage than South Korea if the strait remains closed, as crude oil exports account for a major share of their economies. He said those countries believe they can lower the risk by storing oil outside the strait, then selling it later if needed. Yang added that several governments have already asked South Korea to begin talks on using oil storage facilities. South Korea already has a joint storage agreement with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, the state-run oil company of the UAE. He declined to name the countries that are in contact with the Korean government, saying it will reveal more details at an appropriate time. According to the International Energy Agency, about 20 million barrels of oil passed through the Strait of Hormuz each day last year, accounting for roughly a quarter of all global seaborne oil trade. The strait also handled around 20% of the global LNG trade. Under South Korea's joint oil storage project, foreign oil companies can store crude in facilities run by the Korea National Oil Corporation. In return, Seoul earns rental fees and secures the right of first refusal, allowing the government to purchase the oil first during a supply emergency. The Director General said the system strengthens Korea's energy security because the oil is physically inside the country and can be supplied to local refiners if needed. With concerns growing over another prolonged supply shock, South Korea is emerging as a strategic energy hub for the region. Kim Sejong, Arirang News.
Amid rising tensions, the United States and Iran are signaling a possible return to talks later this week. The renewed diplomatic push comes as Washington enforces a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, raising the stakes for a potential deal. Park Gun-woo with the latest.
The U.S. and Iran could return to the negotiating table later this week, after their first round of talks ended over the weekend without a breakthrough. According to Reuters on Tuesday, multiple sources say the two sides may resume negotiations in the Pakistani capital, Islamabad, where the initial talks were held. While an exact date has not been set, an Iranian official said they are keeping their schedules open between the 17th and 19th, while a U.S. official told AP that talks could take place as early as the 16th. Pakistani officials who are mediating between the two sides say they are in contact with both governments and that another round of talks is likely to take place over the weekend. One of the key sticking points is expected to be Iran's uranium enrichment, as U.S. President Donald Trump mentioned on Monday.
Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. And we agreed to a lot of things, but they didn't agree to that. And I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal.
According to the Wall Street Journal, Washington has proposed a framework of up to 20 years, while the New York Times reports that Tehran has put forward a counterproposal with a shorter timeline of around 5 years. The report adds that the U.S. is also offering possible sanctions relief in return, marking a shift from its previous demand for a complete halt to enrichment. The developments come as the U.S. has begun enforcing a blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz since Monday morning U.S. Eastern Time, deploying 15 naval vessels. Trump has warned that any Iranian ships approaching the area could face immediate action. China criticized the move on Tuesday, calling it a dangerous and irresponsible action that could further escalate tensions. Foreign ministers from Southeast Asian countries have also urged the U.S. and Iran in a joint statement to resume peace talks and ensure the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. With the temporary pause in hostilities between the U.S. and Iran set to expire next week, attention is now on whether the upcoming talks can lead to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and a more lasting agreement. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, North Korea appears to have completed a new uranium enrichment facility at Yongbyon, signaling a potential expansion of its nuclear arsenal. Satellite imagery also points to increased activity at Pyeongsan, suggesting a possible boost in nuclear material production there. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
Beyond Parallel, an analytic vehicle focused on Korean unification, reported on Monday that a building at Yongbyon, believed to be a new uranium enrichment plant, seems to have been completed. Last June, the International Atomic Energy Agency said North Korea was building a uranium enrichment plant to produce weapons-grade material for nuclear weapons. Satellite imagery from early April showed the completion of various facilities, such as a backup generator, administrative building, and garage, and people currently working on internal construction. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi stated in March that the agency is continuing to monitor a new building at Yongbyon, which has dimensions and infrastructure, including power supply and cooling capacity, similar to the Gangsan enrichment facility. The new building is externally complete and internal fitting is likely underway. Beyond the Parallel maintains that it is a reasonable indication of North Korea's ongoing efforts to expand its nuclear weapons inventory, since both the new building at Yongbyon and the Gangsan facility remain undeclared by North Korea. Meanwhile, another satellite image of Pyeongsan, Hwanghae-bukdo province, shows signs that suggest North Korea is expanding its nuclear weapons production. The construction of the roof, which is a noticeable blue color, indicated that work has been completed. In particular, a facility processing uranium ore into uranium concentrate, a key raw material for nuclear weapons, appears to be operating. If the new enrichment facility in Yongbyon becomes operational, analysts say the production capacity could be nearly doubled. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea's June 3rd local elections are now just 50 days away, marking the first major nationwide vote since President Lee Jae-myung officially took office. For more on how the race is shaping up, our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun joins us here in the studio with us. Welcome, Hae-ryun.
Good evening, Morgan.
So let's start with the big picture first, Hae-ryun. So what exactly is really at stake in this latest elections, and why is it drawing so much attention right now?
So the results will effectively serve as the first report card of sorts for the Lee government, and with the ruling Democratic Party already holding a majority in the National Assembly, it's heading into the contest in a commanding position. On the flip side, if the results disappoint, we could start hearing calls for a check on executive power as early as next year. What's making this feel particularly consequential is President Lee's current approval rating, sitting at over 60% for the fifth consecutive week, according to Realmeter. Even in traditionally conservative strongholds like Daegu and Gyeongsang-bukdo province, positive ratings have crossed 55%. The Democrats are in a genuinely strong position right now, and party leader Chung Cheong-rae has made the party's ambitions clear.
We will sweep the country in a wave of blue and win the June 3rd local elections.
Wow, Hae-ryun, so that first report card, it's definitely drawing a lot of attention. So tell us, where does the race currently stand right now? And also tell us about the key battlegrounds.
So to start off, the Democrats are, currently finishing its candidate selection process, and it's essentially finished because they filled 13 out of the 16 regional seats. And this whole Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon candidates even held a joint press conference this week, pledging to run coordinated campaigns across the capital region. DP's Seoul candidate Chung Won-ho said that it's important that Seoul, Gyeonggi, and Incheon pool their strength to drive national competitiveness forward. 6 regions already have their full matchups confirmed: Busan, Incheon, Gangwon, Ulsan, Daejeon, and Gyeongsang-namdo province, where People Power Party incumbents will face off against senior Democratic figures. The People Power Party, by contrast, is still mid-primary in Seoul, has yet to even begin its Gyeonggi race, and is dealing with significant internal fallout in Daegu, where 2 prominent figures who were cut from the primary are both signaling independent runs. People Power Party leader Jang Dong-hyuk, who drew criticism this week for departing on a 5-night trip to Washington just 50 days before the election, has sought to project some confidence.
We stand at the threshold of opening a greater future, built on 4 years of overwhelming achievement.
As for the key battlegrounds, Seoul, Busan, and Daegu, Seoul is historically a bellwether. Voters there have swung between the two parties in each of the last 3 major elections, making it the most symbolically significant race on the board, with incumbent Mayor Oh Se-un facing DP challenger Chung Won-ho, who is running on a 12-year record as Hongdong-gu district chief. In Busan, the Democrats are riding the national mood, but the city handed the People Power Party 17 of its 18 parliamentary seats in the last general election. So whether that momentum can overcome the city's conservative track record remains the central question. And in Daegu, traditionally the heart of conservative Korea, the People Power Party's internal chaos may prove to be its own worst enemy, with 2 prominent figures cut from the primary threatening independent runs that could split the conservative vote and open a path for Democratic candidate and former Prime Minister Kim Boo-kyum.
So a very contrast situation we're seeing between the 2 major parties. But beyond this regional races, we hear that the by-elections, it's also being held at the same time. Tell us about that.
Right, and as you said, this is actually what's generating a lot of the political intrigue right now, because several sitting lawmakers are currently sitting for governor or mayor, and the National Assembly seats are opening up, and those by-elections are happening on the same day. At least 10 seats are already confirmed, and depending on how the remaining primaries play out, that number could climb as high as 17, making it, as some are calling it, a mini general election. The most watched seat is in Busan, where the DP is courting the presidential AI advisor Ha Jung-woo to run, while former PPP politician Han Dong-un has effectively declared his own candidacy in the same district, raising the prospect of a high-profile 3-way race.
Right, so we'll have to keep close tabs on how the situation would develop leading up to the elections. Thank you so much for your report, Hae-ryun.
Thank you for having me.
South Korea will begin construction of a new presidential office in the city of Sejong next summer. And that's according to Senior Presidential Secretary for Public Relations and Communication Lee Kyu-yeon, who told reporters Tuesday that President Lee Jae-myung has ordered swift construction so the office can be used within his term, which runs through 2030. To that end, the Blue House will open a bid for the development of a 350,000 square meter site on Wednesday. Now, this project is estimated to cost around $6.6 million and is expected to take 14 months to complete. The annual construction will then begin in August 2027 based on a design proposal to be selected later this month. Relocating the presidential office to Sejong was one of President Lee's campaign pledges to promote balanced regional development. And to the nation's economy, South Korea's shipments of ICT products overseas for the month of March soared past $40 billion for the first time, bolstered by semiconductors. Kim Jun-hong has the story.
Exports of South Korea's ICT products surged to a record in March, breaking above the $40 billion mark for the first time, driven by strong AI and chip demand. Data released on Tuesday by the Ministry of Science and ICT showed $43.51 billion of ICT exports in March, up 112% from a year earlier. The figure rose by about $10 billion from February, marking a 14th consecutive month of growth. In particular, ICT shipments accounted for more than 50% of the country's total exports. Semiconductor exports were the main driver, jumping 150% year-on-year to $32.84 billion. This marks the first time monthly shipments have topped the $30 billion level. The notable surge between February and March is largely due to increased exports of high-demand memory components.
HBM and conventional memory, including DRAM and NAND flash, appear to have played a key role in driving earnings. Samsung is increasing its HBM supplies to NVIDIA, while prices for standard DRAM have more than doubled, lifting margins. A similar trend is evident at SK Hynix, and that is likely reflected in the overall results.
As production shifts toward next-generation HBM, the supply of general-purpose DRAMs has tightened, pushing up prices across the segment. These supply dynamics are expected to provide an additional boost to earnings in the near term. Mobile phones and computers saw double-digit growth, while displays and telecom equipment posted declines. Meanwhile, exports rose across all major markets, with shipments to the United States and China surging by triple digits. This helped push the ICT trade surplus to $27.36 billion, also setting a new record for a second consecutive month. With demand for AI chips expected to remain strong, earnings are likely to stay solid, with semiconductors taking on a larger share of the economy. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Regional tourism rose substantially in the first quarter of this year as more people chose to travel within national borders but beyond the Seoul metropolitan area. In fact, the regional visit rate rose to 34.5%, up 3.2 percentage points. According to the Culture Ministry, the number of foreign visitors entering through regional airports surged nearly 50% on year. The number of Koreans making regional trips to places such as Yeongwol, Gochang, Miryang, and Gangjin also jumped nearly 7% on year. Now, these findings are being linked to government initiatives to spur regional tourism, such as the half-cost travel program. South Korea's southern port city of Busan is among the fastest aging major cities, with a growing share of senior residents. In response, the city officials are rolling out employment programs that tap into the experience and empathy of older workers. Our Park Jun-han reports from the ground.
Hello, good morning.
A 75-year-old English-speaking tour guide is helping foreign tourists, directing them as they finish a cruise.
Being out here, meeting new people every day, guiding them and greeting them, really adds energy to my daily life. Although I've gotten older, I feel appreciated as a member of society. I'm grateful for that.
And when moving to the village health center, it is common to see older adults taking care of other older adults. Programs such as health surveys and exercise sessions help people stay active and in shape. Some work involves classifying waste medication or disposing of it properly, crucial to environmental safety.
What you're seeing here is part of a citywide senior job program in Busan, with over 70,000 older people, about 10% of the elderly population, taking part.
And this is just a few examples out of numerous types of jobs that senior workers can take part in.
We want to show that we are not simply recipients of help, but are active contributors who add value to the community. We hope citizens will see us not as retired elderly, but as professionals with experience and wisdom.
For Busan, the number of older adults has already outpaced the city's young population of 19 to 34-year-olds. For the city, being able to bring older adults to the workplace is a must rather than a choice.
If we approach older adults as social resources who can play a role as members of the local community, I believe employment programs like this can function effectively in cities around the world.
For many cities and the global economy, as the city shifts into a super-aged society, the case of Busan serves as a real-world testbed. Park Jun-han, Arirang News, Busan.
Warm early summer-like conditions will continue across the western regions tomorrow. Temperatures will rise well above seasonal averages, especially across the central regions and inland areas of the southwest. Many areas will see highs around 25 degrees Celsius, with some spots reaching as high as 27 degrees tomorrow. As for air quality, ultra-fine dust levels are expected to be good in most areas. And Jeju Island could see occasional rain through tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 12 degrees, Chuncheon at 9 degrees, Busan at 13 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 25 degrees, Gwangju at 27 degrees, Busan at 19 degrees. Looking ahead, more rain is expected across the southern regions and on Jeju Island this Friday. For now, it'll feel warm during the day, but cooler mornings and evenings will bring a big day-to-night temperature difference. So please take care. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
And that's all we have for tonight. Thank you for watching. This was Kim Mo-gyun filling in for Kim Dami, and I'll be back with Within the Frame at 8:30 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned.